you can't prune if you're not paying attention, right? So you have to identify and say, hey, what's going on today, right? If you know your employees' good days, you're going to recognize the bad days. Just like talking about a plant, you can look at a plant and it's healthy, but as soon as those leaves start to droop, you know, okay, there's something it's missing. So if it's water, let's time to water it, right?
Welcome to the Restoration Playbook Podcast, the podcast where we dive into the real strategies that help restoration companies build stronger teams and better businesses. I'm Travis Martin, the Vice President of Product and Marketing at KnowHow. Today's guest is Marcie Richardson, COO of Guarantee Restoration Services, a 50-year-old company with 150 employees across the southeastern United States. Marcie has helped transform Guarantee into a place where people show up, support each other, and stay for the long haul. In this episode, Marcie breaks down the surprising above-the-line, below-the-line framework she uses to help managers give better feedback. She also shares the bold practice her executive team uses, calling each other out when they fall short of the company's values, and why it's built more trust, not less. You'll also hear about how Guarantee handles employees with bad attitudes in a way that's rooted in connection, not confrontation, and how they manage to keep fun and humor alive, even during midnight emergency calls in hurricane season. There's one line from Marcie in this interview that really stuck with me. If you know your employees' good days, you'll recognize bad days. That's what this whole episode is about. Noticing, caring, and leading with intention. If you want practical ways to build a strong people-first culture in a high-stress industry, this episode gives you the blueprint. Let's get into today's conversation with Marcie Richardson.
Hi, I'm Marcie Richardson. I'm the COO of Guarantee Restoration Services. Team culture is when every individual, every team member comes together for the shared purpose and vision of the company.
Marcie, I appreciate you taking the time to chat this morning, and I'm really excited to explore this topic of team culture and establishing, maintaining, in that area of like pruning team culture too, right? We were talking about gardening, and
Right.
It's not all organic. There's a hand that has to be played in shaping team culture. But first, I want to just explore your background a little bit. How did you get into restoration? And I'm wondering, because you've been with Guarantee for a while, if you could chart the growth of Guarantee over the years as well.
Yeah. So I got into restoration. I got in with Guarantee about 6.5 years ago. I've been in HR my entire career, and it was me just simply filling out a resume or some application to the job posting for an HR manager with Guarantee. And there's no regrets, since I do believe restoration is where I belong. It's a heart, like I connect with it. There's a deep connection. And Guarantee, this is actually our 50th year we've been in business. It started in 1974 with Ellen and Chunky folks. They started in their apartment as carpet cleaning, which is what a lot of restoration companies have started off. And we've grown to where we are today with 6 offices across 3 states, 150 employees. So it's moving, and we're here to stay. And it's a great legacy that we have created in 50 years.
That's awesome, man. 50 years, what a story.
Yeah.
And I would imagine over the course of the 50 years, a lot of elements have evolved with Guarantee, including the team culture. And I know that you've played a heavy hand in shaping the team culture at Guarantee. I feel like talking about team culture is a cliche at this point.
Yes.
And so much so that saying team culture is a cliche is also a cliche. We've gone full circle now. So instead, I would like to start by you just describing Guarantee's culture to me. Like I'm picturing like a BBC documentary with David Attenborough, just like observing what he sees in the wild, right? What would somebody see if they were to observe Guarantee's team culture?
If somebody would come in and first glance, you would see fun. You would see connection. You would see every person working together as a team for the common goal. you would walk in and hear the laughter and you would hear the jokes. Starting as a family with a husband and wife, and now their son runs it, there is a family atmosphere to the entire organization. And no matter what office you go into, you're going to feel that same sense of togetherness and connection, and the same fun and humor. Because even though that's not a written value, I do believe that fun and humor is in everything that we do. So you probably see our videos on social media. You can't deny that fun is part of who we are. We like to let loose a little bit.
That's awesome. So we see that fun aspect, and you're right. Whether you're walking around the office or just following Guarantee on LinkedIn, you see it there. What are some of those other elements of the team culture that someone would observe if they were just walking around the halls?
You would see hard work, right? Some of our values is commitment. And a lot of times when you're looking at values, you're thinking of outward, but it's also an inward. All of our employees are committed to each other to doing the best that they can so the next person can do their job very well and do to their best. Some of the other things you walk around and it's actually caring. I say a lot of times that you have to commit and care about your employees to have and bring about that positive culture that you want. So you'll see a lot of interactions that are just genuine to each other.
And so I'm curious how you seed those elements in a culture, and then maybe just to keep with the gardening analogy, like water them and grow them and prune them. I think it's one thing for the CEO to do a fun video on social media and then say, hey, we clearly care about fun, but it's another to get buy-in from all the staff. And you're constantly bringing new people into the company too, who have their own values. So how do you get everyone singing from the same hymn book, so to speak?
So I think it does start at the top down, right? It starts with our CEO and him speaking the language. If you have to speak what you want to see, you have to, like you're talking about it, that's the watering, that's the pruning, that is fertilizing the soil. If you're not speaking the language, you can't expect anybody downwind to do that. And so it starts then in your training and you're using that language with your managers below you, and then they're saying that language to their direct reports below them. And you continue to do that and build, because if it has to be a conscious thing every day too. It's not just, hey, I'm going to say it on one day and then, hey, y'all run with it the rest. You have to do it consciously and intentional every day, or it's not going to succeed.
And so walk me through that process of your managers, your supervisors, your frontline staff. How do you curate that in them? Like there has to be, I want to explore that pruning process a little bit, right? Is it performance reviews that says, hey, you're not having enough fun? Help me understand how you do that kind of corrective adjustment.
Well, I think it goes back to actually connecting with your employees all the time, right? You can't prune if you're not paying attention, right? So you have to identify and say, hey, what's going on today, right? If you know your employees' good days, you're going to recognize the bad days. Just like talking about a plant, you can look at a plant and it's healthy, but as soon as those leaves start to droop, you know, okay, there's something it's missing. So if it's water, let's time to water it, right? And so if we teach our managers to interact with their employees, it's not just on evaluations twice a year, and it's not on the random one-on-ones once a month, maybe. It is when you're walking by your employees in the morning time, and you ask them, hey, how's it going? To actually care about that question and to listen to that answer and whatever that may be, because at that moment, that's when you capitalize on it. And then the other thing we teach our managers with the language is above the line and below the line type of language. Are you lifting them up? Are you motivating them? Are you pushing them? And that is what we teach our managers to recognize and what that language looks like.
I think this principle is really interesting. And because people who will be listening to this I think they would agree that they would want a team culture that aligns with the values that they have identified, but that process of bringing it to fruition is where things sometimes get hazy. Can you expand on this? Above the line, below the line? Let's just dive into that principle a little bit. What is that?
So below the line to me is you're shaming. right? You're using negative words, negative emotions, negative tones, all of those things that you're just not bringing people up. And if part of your goal and your values over as a company and what you want to see reflected in your employees, it has to be above the line thinking. It has to be, how are you lifting them up? How are you motivating them? How are you pulling them to do more, right? And it's the appreciation, it's the value that you're bringing to that employee. And so if you're wanting to see a good culture, you have to cultivate it by your words and the actions that show with that. So when you're saying, instead of saying something like, hey, you could have done better, right? I really appreciate the effort that you put in. Just that little change of that same phrase goes a long way in how somebody's going to feel right then and there about what their job performance was.
That's fascinating. Would you have an example of a situation where you had to correct a manager who you could see maybe was just like biasing towards below the line dialogue versus above the line dialogue? What would you coaching that manager look like? Again, putting myself in the shoes of someone who's like, I'm bought in. I haven't heard this framework. Sounds really great. Now, how do I get my team to start adopting that framework?
A lot of times when coaching up managers, they will get down on themselves too, or they'll get very frustrated with a team member for them. And it's okay, not to think of where you are today, but where you want to go. And that is the framework that you have to define that. It's today, yeah, that may have been a down point, but if you want to move in the future, think in the future. So how do you want to get here into your goal? And so you have to talk about that. Hey, you know what? This is fine. And we'll recognize what we made a mistake on today, but let's work together to get that, to fix it, right? How's the next time it happens? And so when you're continuing to coach and to bring in the positive and having open conversations with your employees, then you're going to continue to move the needle. But if you're just going to stay what happened today, or what, I won't even say failure, but just what went wrong today, you're never going to move. So that's about the conversation. Don't focus on today and what happened today. Focus on where you want to be, and all of your conversations angle towards that.
So what I hear you saying is, with that manager, you've identified where they want to go. Like this collective understanding. That's like step one almost, right? Is, hey, we both agree today you're here when we want to get you over here. And then that gives you the framework for those day in, day out conversations where sometimes you get 2 steps closer, sometimes you take a step back, but you've got shared alignment over where you want that person to go.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Very cool. That makes sense. Talking about this top-down team culture, I imagine a situation where, let's say I'm on the executive team. Maybe I am the top dog or just one of the executives. And someone else on the executive team is actually not living up to that value. And so I'm thinking, well, how can I get my staff to buy in when not even all the leaders are aligned? How would you coach that person, either with a peer or with their direct report on the executive team? Hey, I see some cultural issues that we got to fix here before I ever ask our water techs to embody this value. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And that's spot on, because if your executive team, your top line leadership is not aligned, you can 100% guarantee that your bottom down will not be on that same thing. So one of the things, if we're talking peer to peer, is that you have to have right at the beginning the understanding, hey, we're on the same, and for us to be effective, we have to be in alignment and be okay with calling each other out, right? It's not that we're being negative. It is because we have that shared common purpose of being the best for the company. And so having that conversation, just being candid and being vulnerable, because there's always going to be the time where I didn't necessarily wasn't aligned, and sharing those stories. And the other part about that is giving grace to your team members. Like, hey, I understand, but we can't stay there. So how can I help you move and elevate so you're raising your lid so we can make sure that we are being positive and moving forward for the rest of the team?
And it sounds like if there is alignment, at least in theory, among the leadership team about the values we want to live out, what our culture should be, then it's easier to have that conversation with a team member, because it's not like, hey, you do this thing and I don't really like it. It just doesn't sit well with me. It's more objective, right? It's, hey, we agreed that we value hard work and we value fun. I don't see you living that out in this area. Is that fair?
Yeah, that's absolutely fair, because I think when you have your executive team, you have those shared agreements. I mean, that's where you're there, is because you've always lived those values, right? You have those common agreements with you. And I think what the other thing is that you identify, and we have month-to-month meetings, but we have an executive team purpose. And we say it every week, actually, as a team. And we ask, hey, are you okay? Are you living your values this week? Because there's a lot of times we also get in the day-to-day, in the busy work, and we forget to necessarily hold that mirror up for ourselves. And it's really good to have the team members to be that mirror sometimes for us. And I think to move the company and to continue to be that beacon, it's like, hey, you know what? You're not showing up as committed today. You're not showing up as a good team member today. So how can we do that?
Just to pull on that thread a little bit more. So at your leadership meetings, each employee answers, each person answers for themselves if they're living the values, or are you asking like other people, do I think Marcie's living the values or not? Like, walk me through that.
Asking other people.
Okay.
Because sometimes that we don't always are honest with ourselves, right? Or we will forget a time that necessarily we weren't in that value mind space. And in the past week, our team members, we reflect, hey, did we show up? Were we living the values during the past week? And when we're reading that statement as our executive team, like, hey, maybe you can work on that a little bit better.
That takes a level of, I think, transparency and comfortability that not many people would say today they have, but I think is a really honorable, and it sounds like once you can get there, hey, like the level of impact you can have because everyone is being honest with each other is profound. So what was the process of getting there? I assume not everyone, the day they joined the leadership team was like comfortable bearing their soul that way. So how did you guys get to that point where you have that level of transparency and comfort and you can call out each other for not living out the values?
Well, first of all, you have to know that it's not personal.
Yeah.
And that, again, that you're very grounded in where you're going and the commitment that you have to the company. We do an executive team retreat every year. And we did ours past November, December. And we came up at that meeting with our executive team vision and mission and purpose. And we agreed at that point, that's what we were going to do. But in that also to show the grace. And so you have to have that common agreement and connection. It's really about the connection of the team and the strength of the team that you're able to do that. And it's always for a higher purpose. And I think that's the other thing, is that we're not putting ourselves first. We know that the company is first, that our people are first. And if we want to show up the best for the company and the people, then we have to be solid as a team and to do that.
That's awesome. And I haven't heard of another company who does that, but I think that's one of the reasons why you guys are leaders in this space. So last question I have around this topic is around the lines of what we talked about, which is just those hard conversations with people as you build and weed and prune towards that ideal culture. Can you give an example, a conversation a manager had to have with a team member, just like, hey, some people have bad attitudes and not everyone is naturally optimistic, but when that happens consistently, it can certainly lead to a negative effect on morale and culture. So do you have any examples of those conversations and how they went? Again, just trying to put myself in the shoes of someone looking through a window, being like, hey, how do I recreate that culture that seems to work so well?
What I always tell my managers is, first of all, is get them comfortable, right? Don't put a desk between you. Go take a walk, put a round table somewhere where they're dropping their guard. Because a lot of times when you sit behind a desk, there's automatically a wall going up because they feel like they're being in trouble. They're in trouble for something, right? So take them out, get them comfortable, and get them talking. Ask the questions, right? If you start off a conversation of, hey, I know this, and this, well, they're automatically going to have, again, a defense going up. So how can you drop those defenses, ask them the questions, and get them to open up? But the other thing about that is that leader may not be the best person to have that conversation with. And I think a lot of times leaders and managers, we think automatically, oh, I'm in this role, so I need to be able to have that connection, where that person may actually have a better connection with somebody else. And so making sure that you're okay, first of all, of having you, the goal is to have that person open up. So having that connection with that, whomever it is, it could be a direct report, it could be a peer-to-peer, whatever it is, but making sure they're safe and they feel comfortable in having those conversations. And so, because it's a vulnerable space for somebody to open up. It's not everybody's easy with that, right? And sharing and all that stuff. So open up, make them feel valued, ask them direct questions. And sometimes you're not going to get on the first conversation. And it's about continually and just making them feel valued and opening to whatever they may say. The other thing is don't judge them, right? Whatever answer you get back, you can't cast judgment. You can't have an opinion. Just continue to ask questions. How can we move you? What can I do? See where that goes with you.
And it sounds like it's more an exploring dialogue than it is the first conversation is like,
Absolutely.
now you need to start doing this.
Right.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Because it's not a one size fits all. Every individual is in there differently. And I've said you have a person coming in to do a job, right? And when you remember and recognize that they're all individuals, that they're all people, you're not going to create a one size fits all remedy for every person that's having an issue. And so that is why you ask the questions, because then the dialogue, they're leading it, right? And you're just trying to help figure out how you can best service them.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. I want to explore what the employment experience is like at Guarantee, because I know you guys think a lot about that too. Young workers have lots of options today. And it seems in comparison to maybe 10, 15 years ago, where people were okay just to get an internship at a cool job just because they would like to see where things would go. Right now, it feels like things like team culture, pay, those play a bigger role than they did maybe 10, 15 years ago. So knowing that young workers have so many options, what's the employment experience like at Guarantee? Like, how do you guys differentiate yourself when those entering the workforce feel like they kind of have the pick of the litter, so to speak?
Yeah. I mean, that's the one thing in the last 4 years, really, of COVID, has just opened up the possibilities of what people can do, right? And restoration is probably not high on the list, right? So how am I drawing and keeping people and younger workers coming to us and wanting to stay? I think it goes a lot to that, the culture that we do have of the family-oriented culture that we do have a fun. A job's a job, and we need to have performance, and we need to have the customer experience be there. So that is what we're driving. But knowing that we're staying true to who we are. I think that one of the things that I see in younger workers is that individuality, right? And they're being true to who they are. And when you see a company being true and live into the values that they state, the mission that they state, the vision, they say, you know what? They're living exactly what they're preaching, right? And I think that's one of the simple things that is overlooked, because I've said my kids are 23 and 20. And so I have some connection of what they think of, and they're individuals and they want to be seen as individuals. And companies have a personality. And when you're living what you're preaching, that's a connection that they're not seeing. Some of the other things that we do is that we do more than just job training. We tell the employees, hey, if there is something else, another field that interests you, whether it's in restoration or not, let me know, because I want to grow you as a person, not just as an employee. So if I have a technician who's really interested in accounting, let's look and explore some options in accounting so I can get you and strengthen you up. Because again, I know the better person that I build over here, I'm going to get a better employee.
Yeah. I'm curious on the individualism side, because I think you're totally right, where a lot of young workers, they want to figure out who they are I think a employer that was not skilled in navigating that could create a company that just had a bunch of mavericks, right? That were not collectively working towards the same goals. So how do you pull out those like positive threads of individualism and me trying to figure out who I am in the world and what's going on, while collectively ensuring that the set of individuals all advances, guarantees common goals?
Yeah. So there's a couple of dynamics in this that I hear is that every company is wanting to make sure that you're passing along what you're learning from one generation. So you have the older generation and the younger. What they say is we have the most generations working right now ever. And so the first thing is making sure that we're teaching the younger employee and that we're drawing them in and engaging them and making sure that they're able to step out in their confidence, because that's the other thing that I see is that a lot of younger employees, they're gaining their confidence as individuals, right? One of the things I tell people is that there's a lot of processes, but you know what A starts with or what A needs to look like, right? And it needs to look like Z. B through Y, figure it out. That is yours, because the way I compare it is everybody has different learning styles, right? And it's the same thing with work. There's a lot of processes you have to follow and you can't deviate, right? But when you have the ability and the flexibility to engage and create your own path, then do that. I'm going to empower them to do that, because B through Y, they can come up with so many other ways and techniques that I may not have thought of, because my B to Y is going to be different. And so I'm giving people that option of, hey, create your own path in that. How does that look like? And so when we're passing down from generations where we're going, I tell the people, even though they have their own way, open up your own path into that. And so that is an avenue that I do let individuals explore, that when they're trying to find who they are in the younger worker of doing that.
For workers with families, lots going on. I mean, restoration does not fall neatly into 9 to 5.
Right.
And so how do you attract and keep those workers and promote that level of balance or harmony with life outside of work at the same time?
Like you said, restoration's a roller coaster, right? And in our business, we do a lot of hurricane work, and hurricane season's coming. And when they're gone, they can be gone for 3 or 4 weeks at a time, maybe even more. And so one of the things that we do promote is, first of all, is if you need to take a vacation, right? Take your time off, recollect yourself, and make sure that you are always rested and whatever that is. Wow. The other thing is that, unfortunately, because we don't know, we never have a call that comes in 9 to 5, right? The worst calls are always going to come in at 1 a.m. in the morning or whatever it is that what we do is we recognize and we give back. So when somebody is working at times like you're taking your time off and spend time with the family, work-life balance is always a delicate thing when you don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. Restoration is very customer driven. And so what I tell everybody is, when we are slow, to take that time and to be slow, because I can't necessarily guarantee what tomorrow is going to look like. So we make sure when we are slow that we do more trainings. We let people kind of take a little more time. We let them off a little bit early, take a longer lunch break even, right? We do more fun things to get them back in a breather. You know, I'll even say this Friday, or it's Memorial Day weekend, we're doing crawfish boil in South Louisiana, because it's an employee thing and it's right before hurricane season's going to come. We're getting together as a group. We're going to have some fun and just let your hair down a little bit, and as a team to bond and just enjoy that together before potentially we get busy. So
Recognize the season that you're...
And recognize the season. Always recognize the season.
Yeah, that's good. Marcie, before we wrap up here, I want to explore what you've been given by leaders that have come before you. So I'm curious if you have any timeless truths or mottos or anything like that that you hold on to.
One thing that I was told, it's been a few years now, that I take with me every day is to remember to pause. You know, again, in this industry, it's reactionary. and you have a tendency to quick react to something, and to just pause and to gather yourself, make sure your emotions are in check, to think about something a little bit longer, to pause, remember to pause has been something that has benefited me very well. And not only in restoration, but in the new role, is to just pause.
And likewise, I wonder if you can think of any leaders that you've had over the years, and if there's something that they've given you, like advice or feedback or a lesson that has stuck with you over the years as you're now leading and mentoring others.
Remember that everybody is an individual. I think back at my time in my career, and the time that I didn't feel like an individual and wanting to keep everybody in a box, or somebody that I felt that I was in a box, right? And that has been a mentor that I've had has told me, don't keep people in a box and let them grow. And I keep going to that individual thing. And when I think of that I've allowed myself to step out of the box and to grow is really when I took off and flourished. And so I want to make sure that I'm passing that on and giving other individuals, other people the opportunity to flourish and not keeping them in a box.
Awesome. Marcie, I really appreciate you taking the time to chat with us. We are excited about the next generation of leaders in the restoration industry, and I appreciate you being a leader and a coach and a mentor to them.
Thank you, Travis.
All right, that's a wrap on this episode. Huge thank you to Marcie Richardson for sharing how she leads with intention and helps her team stay aligned, connected, and accountable, even in the unpredictable world of restoration. If this conversation gave you new tools for coaching your restoration team or made you think differently about your culture, take a second to hit subscribe. We've got more great episodes coming your way. And if you've ever expanded or thought about expanding to a second location, maybe a third or a fourth, and you've been worried about losing the magic that makes your restoration company what it is, losing that consistency that your customers rely on, we've got something tailored for you. Join us for a free live webinar on May 8th at 1 p.m. Eastern Time. It's called Multiple Locations, Single Source of Truth: How to Maintain Brand and Job Consistency as You Scale. In this webinar, we'll show you how to keep your quality high and your processes consistent even as you expand. You'll learn how to eliminate the guesswork in between teams, the number one mistake that companies make when scaling and how to avoid it, and practical steps to centralize your systems so that every location follows the same playbook. We'll also break down how the top restoration companies are using built-for-purpose tools like KnowHow to replicate excellence at scale without needing to be in every room or on every job site. You can register for the link in the show notes or head to tryknowhow.com/resources to save your spot. Thanks for listening to the Restoration Playbook Podcast. See you next time.